What makes a perfect Toku show?
Fight!
I have thought long and hard about what makes the best Toku shows so good, and I have come up with a recipe for the perfect Toku show. Basically, everything that a Toku show must have to be great. My name is Acrimony, and I make Toku videos for Toku fans. If that sounds cool to you? Then consider subscribing. I'd love to have you in the community. And of course, let me know what you think in the comments. But without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the theme of a show. This can be a well-established theme, such as in Sentai with ninjas, dinosaurs, or vehicles, but I definitely give bonus points for something a bit more unique. Uncharted territory, if you will. Dinos and ninjas are cool, but nothing beats a well-delivered and well-thought-out new concept like Gokaiger's Pirates, for example. I also have to mention Kamen Rider X8's Gaming Doctors here, as that was extremely unique, or even King Ozier's royalty theme. A good theme is critical to a good Toku show, because it's one of the first things that we notice about the show. Next up is the intro. A great Toku show needs an amazing intro. Of course, musical taste is subjective, but the song absolutely needs to have heart and emotion, as well as being very catchy and getting stuck in your head. Tonally, it needs to be a good fit with the show, and also have enough energy to get you hyped for what you're about to watch. I think a great example of this would be Kamen Rider Black RX. The song is simple enough to be catchy, it's high energy, and it will absolutely get stuck in your head. I think the best intros are high octane, meaning they have a lot of energy, as opposed to something slower like that of Kamen Rider Agito. The next thing that a perfect Toku show has is amazing costumes. These need to be unique, but also fit within the franchise. A good example would be Kamen Rider Forza. He's shaped like a rocket ship and is obviously very unique, but when you look at his bug eyes on the helmet, he is instantly recognizable as a Kamen Rider, despite the differences that he has between himself and the other riders that came before him. Suits can also be a more modern take on a previous look in the case of Use Soldier. Since they went back to dinos again, they made the helmets look aggressive. Simplicity is important, but not so simple that it's boring. This is mostly a criticism of older Toku shows, which is simply a sign of the era. I'm looking at you, Goggle 5. Despite this, I think that Kamen Rider 1 and Gorenja are both extremely iconic looking series. But to be fair, this might just be because they're so legendary within the genre. The next thing that makes a perfect Toku show is the cast. Our heroes have to be likable, with a fleshed out backstory and motivations. We have to know why they're doing what they're doing. I think a good example of this is Eiji from Kamen Rider Oz. Before the events of the show, he helped communities in Africa when he became friends with a girl named Ru. Civil War broke out, and the girl was killed, unfortunately, with Eiji being unable to save her. And this is something that drives him to always want to help people. He also loves underwear and gives it as a gift. He has depth and multiple layers to his character. We all know that Rangers and Riders are going to fight, but if we have a good understanding of what they are fighting for, it gives the show so much more weight and intrigue. Next up is the villains. You can't have light without darkness, and a hero is only as good as their villains. Sometimes they work solo, but most of the time they are part of an evil organization or group. Sometimes they are operating against their will due to mind control, but sometimes they just want to enslave or destroy humanity. They have to be memorable and ruthless. The next ingredient in the recipe of a perfect Toku show would be awesome weapons and equipment. Anyone can have a sword, but I like when there's a bit of a twist to it, like in the case of Mega Ranger with the drill saber. They could have easily just given Mega Red a sword, but they gave him a sword that's literally a drill with a handle on the end. I also want to mention Byakko from Dai Ranger, which is Kiba Ranger's sword with a talking tiger's head on the pommel. Very cool. Kamen Rider has a history of transforming swords and guns in multiple seasons, and in the case of Sentai, they have to have an awesome mecha. The next thing that a perfect Toku show needs is comedy. There has to be the perfect amount. With Sentai, slightly more than in Kamen Rider. But it keeps the show entertaining and keeps the show from feeling too bleak and hopeless when we get to the more intense story arcs.
That's right!
I feel like comic relief works the best when it comes to side characters. Some of my favorites would be Navi from Gokaiger or Shunpei from Wizard.
Steam Pepe!
To be a Sentai or Kamen Rider fan, I feel like you need to be a child at heart to enjoy it, and the comedy speaks to that inner child. The next thing that a perfect Toku show has to have is stakes, meaning what's at stake. Without stakes, our heroes would have nothing to fight for. They would have nothing to overcome. The best stakes are logical with a clear, if we don't stop them, then this happens. An example of this is Evol/Evolto from Kamen Rider Build, who is an alien bent on consuming and destroying the world. Clearly we don't want him to win, so it gives us a reason to root for Kamen Rider Build. There's no point in having a fight if we don't care who the winner is. The next thing that a perfect Toku show has to have, it has to have some kind of cultural impact, something that gives it a lasting legacy. This is personified by the show capturing the hearts and minds of the fans. The best examples I can give of this would be Kamen Rider Dino and Gokaiger. Both extremely loved in their own right, both in the West and in Japan, because they hit just that perfect note for the fans. It's easy to make a show that gets attention, but if people are still talking about it and re-watching it 10, 20, or even 30 years later, then you know it had a strong impact on the lives of fans. And the number one thing that a perfect Toku show has to have is awesome action. The harder hitting, the better. But there's still something to be said for slapstick type humor inserted into it for comic relief, like in the case of Magi Ranger. Now my personal preference is something a bit more aggressive, like 01. It's almost anime-like with how it's shot, and the kana on the screen is a very nice touch. You could also go the Michael Bay route and just have non-stop explosions, like in the case of Dynaman. Which was nicknamed Kyaku Sentai Dynaman, with Kyaku meaning gunpowder, because of all of the explosions. So what is the recipe for a perfect Toku show? A unique theme, a great intro, amazing costumes, memorable villains, cool as hell weapons and equipment, the right amount of comedy, high stakes that we care about, a lasting cultural impact, and hard-hitting action. But you know what, guys? That's just what I think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, it would mean a ton to me if you would smack the shit out of that like button. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.